So get out of my face and into my
And welcome back, everyone, to Unknown Origins Radio here on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm Mark Johnson, along with our special guest co-host tonight, Irene Allen Block. We just had a wonderful interview with author Sue King on her book, Lost in Space and Time. And we do have an author theme going here tonight. And this time we're going to go in a different direction on a fascinating subject. And so we're welcoming our guest, Barry Durham, to the program. Now, Barry was born in Manchester, UK, and currently lives in the village of Chipping in Lancashire. And he has been a number of things over the years, from insurance clerk to salesman, and he's done lecturing, and he decided to take some time and start writing some books, and he's written a whole series of books on a fairly interesting subject. And we have, at Glannant Ty, have been very lucky to be able to help him republish his first book, The Demdike Legacy, which has just been released. And we're here to talk about that and the background of it. So, Barry, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you for coming on with us. And I know we've been meaning to get you on here for a while. And, over here in the States, not very many people know the story of the Pendle witches. The famous witchcraft trials that we had over here were the ones that happened in Salem, Massachusetts in the late 1600s. And so we know people, they flock to Salem every year, especially around Halloween time. It's very popular. I know Wiccans in the community who all love going to Salem. And yet it's funny, when I talk to some of them, they're not aware of the story of the Pendle witches, which you based your novel, The Demdike Legacy, on a lot of the facts from that case. First of all, before we get into that, could you tell our audience just a little bit more about your background?
I've been a journalist for 40-odd years until I retired about 2 years ago. I also was a university lecturer teaching what I was doing as a day job, which was designing newspaper and magazine pages. I've been writing seriously for 20-odd years, although trying to get books published 20-odd years ago was hard work. You had to make sure your manuscript landed on the right desk at the right time. Self-publishing is a boon to me and a lot of other people, because it meant you can get your books to an audience, test the water as it is, and see what the reaction is. And that reaction gives you the encouragement to keep writing. So that's what I do now most of the time, is write, tend my garden, and babysit my grandsons.
Well, and that sounds like the kind of life I wish I could have. Instead, I'm running around all over the place. The writing as a passion, we've had many writers on here. In fact, Irene, of course, being online here, sulking in the background here, has written 3 books of her own. And, writing is definitely something that really gets those creative juices flowing. And your novel, The Demdike Legacy, which I loved, and I highly recommend for people to pick up, very highly entertaining. And that's one thing that's really important for people to understand if you're going to do writing, is make it entertaining. If you got a story to tell the story, but you got to make the characters likable and believable. And that's what I really loved about your book. I loved all the characters in the book. And what made you? What gave you the first thoughts for this novel and ultimately the series with these characters? How did that all come about?
I've been fascinated by the story of the Pendle Witches since I was a young teenager. I'd read sort of the classic novels in this country, Harrison Ainsworth's The Lancashire Witches, which was published in the late 19th century. But I just felt there was more to it. And so I started looking into it myself. Not living too far away from the area, I went and visited all the places. That way you get a feel for the whole thing. And I did some extensive research, and I just seen there was a bit more of a story. And while my novel is modern and is a police investigation into murder, I think it also gives a bit more of the background to what happened to the original Pendle witches, because, to be honest, I think they were stitched up. And the original trial, incidentally, if that trial hadn't have gone ahead, I'm not sure that the Salem witch trials would have gone ahead, because they used the precedent at Lancaster, where the witches were tried, of taking the evidence of a 7-year-old girl, and that was what condemned the Pendle witches. And if that hadn't have happened, perhaps, quite probably, the young girl in the Salem witch trial would not have been believed. So it had implications.
Well,
I just wanted to write a good story, and like most things, they start with what if. And I thought, what if there's somebody who still thinks descendants of the Pendle witches are alive and wants to kill them all? It went from there.
Now, getting into the real story of the Pendle witches, now that occurred in the earlier 1600s.
That's right.
And how did that all come about? What were the events that started that?
It was a strange time in England, because King James had two fears. One was Catholics and one was witchcraft. Now, in Lancashire, Protestants and Catholics got on pretty well. But there was an edict went out that somebody had to do something to get into King James's good books. There was a group of people living on Pendle Hill, more or less eking out an existence. And they were an easy target, to be honest. And when somebody curses a peddler, one of the witches curses a peddler for not selling her some hairpins, and he has a stroke, that kicked it all off. He said he was bewitched. She said she was sorry, but the local magistrate saw it as a chance to get him well with the king. And he also saw it as a chance to implicate somebody with whom he was having a land dispute. And it gave him a chance to get his piece of land back, as well as curry favour with the king. So it all very political, and old women living alone on the moor were looked on as well dispensable.
And it's a shame that these fears that which prompts a lot of hysteria, public hysteria, over the years. But between what happened in Salem and with in Lancashire with the Pendle witches, but witches were also hung, and of course the famous image of being burned at the stake for centuries. But these mass hysteria that get these people all caught up in it, like what happened at Salem, and and I'm not an expert on Salem, so I'm not sure how many people were tried and convicted. I know there were several, and there's this wonderful play by Arthur Miller, The Crucible.
Yeah, seen it.
And they turned it. It's been made into a movie a few times. I recently saw the one with Daniel Day-Lewis, and what's in Arthur Miller's mind, what really got these girls started, and it became like a power in egos, because they could accuse anybody and everyone would listen to them, and they had the power, and the one girl getting all the others under her thumb, basically, going after her spurned lover. But it's a similar situation too. It's with the Pendle witches. if you wanted somebody's land, you accuse them of being a witch. They're trying to haul it off, and then people, the people get their land.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, the person involved, Alice Nutter, was a very philanthropic lady. She looked after the poor, and there is a deep feeling. She was a good Catholic, and from the investigations I made, it seems that she was sort of a halfway house for escaping Catholic priests. So they would come to her, she would see them on their way. She was the only one of the accused who said nothing at her trial. She wouldn't answer questions or anything. And the belief is she was protecting the Catholic priests. But she knew she was going to be hung, and she went to the scaffold knowing that she was saving people. Now, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a Protestant, but I admire the lady. And I say the other people involved, Demdike and Chattox, the old women and their daughters and their sons, they were collateral damage, if you will. It was a case of, yes, these are two old people. They eke out a living on the moor, and we can get rid of them. But I think the magistrate, Roger Noel, was after Alice Nutter and the land that was in dispute. And I say it was all politics. And he got his way in the end, and he got his land, and a dozen people died.
Barry, is it true that the Chattox family and the Demdike family turned against each other?
They were at the time.
To accuse each other of witchcraft?
Yes. It was one of those things of, I'm better than you. And they all tried to say, in the end, outdo each other. But I mean, one of them, James Davies, he was, well, I suppose, to not be too politically correct, he was educationally subnormal, and yet he was another one who was brought in. In those days, he was known more or less as the village idiot, and to take his testimony as well, it just shows that there was so much against it. But I mean, both the Chattox and the Demdikes, the Southerns and the Whittles, as they actually were, had helped a lot of people. They were the people they turned to if the cattle were sick, or if people were sick.
Yeah, they were just like wise women, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And a lot of those wise women, they learned. I mean, and let's face it too, when you go back in time, especially go back in time, and in the 1600s, you're still having a lot of influence from, the earlier pagan religions and practices and this isn't a bash on Christianity, just to let people know, but just it's an actual part of history when you had the church coming in and trying to convert people to the religions in every culture that they came into. A lot of times they found the easiest way is, instead of converting by the sword, you convert by saying like, oh yeah, well, you have this feast on December 25th. Well, what a coincidence! That's Jesus's birthday, and that's how Christmas was formed. And that's exactly the date for Christmas that most Christians don't even realize that it's not Jesus' birthday, because nobody knows when his birthday is. In fact, a lot of serious scholars seem to think he was born more in the spring. But they come in and they take some of the local traditions and merge it in with their traditions, with Christianity, to try to make it more palatable to the public.
That's correct.
And, that's how we get a lot of our traffic. I mean, for another great example for Christmas, where in the Bible does it say about decorating the Christmas tree?
It doesn't.
The Yule log,
it's all pagan.
Yeah.
I mean, the original Yule was known as the Festival of the Reborn Sun, S-U-N. You only have to change one letter and you get the Festival of the Newborn Sun.
Exactly.
And this is the way it goes. But, I mean, I suppose I'm lucky where I live. most of the people in the village know I'm a pagan, and I get on well with the local minister and the local priest, and we respect each other, which is not always been the way.
Now, when you say you're a pagan, can you clarify that a little bit more?
Well, I suppose I've been known as a witch to a lot of people. I follow the sort of ancient witchcraft ways of the goddess and everything else, and I don't go to church, although I was brought up a Protestant. In fact, I was a Sunday school teacher at one time. But no, I suddenly felt that there was a lot more to it, and I felt that the earth has more to offer than just to be used, and it's a case of getting close to it and realizing that the earth is a living entity in a way. It's a bit hard to explain. I know there's a lot of people have different views. To me, as I say, it's just, I see the earth as Gaia, if you will, that concept. And why can we not all be part of one whole living thing and revere nature, which is probably why I'm as much a gardener as a writer.
And that is something that, people when they fear, people who come from the religious indoctrination of Christianity or Islam or any of the big religions that preach a lot of fear, and to fear the unknown or to fear anybody else who is not you, which is a part of the problems we're having over in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And but during the time of the Salem witch trials and the Pendle witch trials, you're also still pretty much during to tail end of the Inquisitions, where the Inquisition period within the Catholic Church was just such a vile time, because if you weren't one of them, or you weren't enough of one of them, they could come up with any reason they wanted to throw you in jail, to torture you, to kill you, to save your soul. And
to save your soul, plus the fact that all the property of the people who were convicted went to the torturers and the executioners. So they all had a reason to point out, to put the finger on different people. And it was an easy way to get rid of your enemies.
Oh, yes. Very easy. It's like, oh, you have bad breath. You're a witch.
Yeah, exactly.
That way we don't have to smell you around here anymore, George. Good Lord. It's a very dark period of time, and of course that's part of the reason why they called it the Dark Ages. After the fall of Rome, as for all the things that Rome did, they really did bring a lot of modern advancement to the world. Sure, they held a lot of people under the thumb, conquered countries, came all the way up to Great Britain, and yet at the same time, when that empire collapsed, it left this big gaping hole. And when Constantine embraced Christianity and made it the official religion of the empire, and then, of course, then you have the Catholic Church was formed, and the popes, and then the popes had all this political power, and they continued to branch out but it was a different empire now. It was the Christian empire, and kings were bowing down to the Pope. And I liken what happened over here in both North and South America when the Spanish first came over here in the 1400s and 1500s. They inflooded both continents. They sent missionaries it's almost like with the Russians during the Cold War, and all the warships had their political officers to make sure everyone was a good communist. The same thing happened with the expeditions that came over here looking for gold and riches, and they had the missionaries with them to convert all the pagans. And, which is why South America is a huge Catholic influence there, all the way up into Mexico. And then even here in the United States, there are a lot of Catholics, although there's a lot of Protestants too, because a lot of Protestants were fleeing Europe during those times to come over here for, religious freedom. But it's still trying to convert people. And then they take those pagan religions, those pagan practices interwoven with the Christian ideals, and then you start getting something new. The slaves that were imported in from Africa, coming into the Caribbean to the slave markets before coming to the Americas, that's why on a lot of those South Pacific, not South Pacific, the Caribbean islands, the practices of voodoo and hoodoo came together, because it was a combination of the old ancient pagan religions practices intermixed with the new religion of Catholicism, and they come up with this whole different practice of Santeria.
I suppose in the UK, we were being an outpost of Rome and everything like that. We were lucky in that even though Christianity came here, paganism never really went away. It's been there. It's always been here in the background. And a lot of lip service was paid to the churches. And then the people would go away and worship in their own way. They would celebrate the Sabbats and the midsummer days, the midwinter days, and it just kept out of the way of the priests. But paganism never really went away. Yes, there was a gloss of Christianity over it, but as I say, it's always been here, and it's emerging now in a lot of different ways in this country.
There's a lot of people, and with your background, I'd be interested to get your take on this. When the solstices come around and everybody flocks to Stonehenge, and you have the modern day Druids, and I'll be honest with you, I know nothing of the Druid religion, and but I've heard and I've read some articles that talk about the fact that nobody really knows what the original Druids or the religion was and about. And now people they're calling themselves modern day Druids. Do they still have that knowledge of those pagan religions and practices, or was the Druids someone? The modern day Druids, neo-Druids, I'm not even sure what you would call them, just kind of thinking like they're trying to recapture all that knowledge, but they really didn't have a lot of information to go on.
Well, they don't have a lot of information to go on because nothing was ever written down. It was all passed mouth to mouth sort of thing. So, and when the Romans did do the best to exterminate the Druids, especially on places like Anglesey, and they thought then it had gone, but there was always somebody who remembers, and there's always somebody who has some of the information. I don't think they've got it all. They're reaching, they're using their intuition, I should think, to try to find out what they can about the old ways and interpreting them in a modern context. So they probably don't have a direct descendants to the original Druids, but they're doing the best they can to keep the tradition alive, and I take my hat off to them.
They have the Druid movement has taken root here in the U.S. as well, and then over here we also have the Native Americans and the Native American practices, which I personally have a lot of respect for. And the one thing that always strikes me is the modern religions have the fear of paganism, or I even hate using that word. It's the older nature-based religions.
That's true. And
what people don't understand is that they think, oh, because they're not Christian, they're worshiping the devil, or they have all these they're brainwashed into believing, to fear what they don't understand. And I have a lot of respect for the Native American views on spirituality and the earth. And while every religion has its trappings within the animal kingdom, what they knew, they were involved with what they knew because they lived closer to the earth. They farmed on the earth. They were outdoors. They didn't have the modern conveniences that didn't come later until with Rome and the advancement of civilization. And so living close to the earth, they respected earth. They knew the power of the earth. The power of the wind, the water, the sun, and learning to track those movements for farming, for agriculture, and the people respected the earth. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think you've got a parallel with the Native Americans, with the old Celtic religions and the old Celtic peoples, which still survive in Wales and in parts of Scotland. So in a way, there's a parallel. And I say those beliefs still live on. And I have respect for them. And as I say, they were the same as the American Indians, the Native American religions, in that it was similarly earth-based, nature-based. And this is why I think, in a way, the modern, if you will, religions like Christianity and Islam have a little bit of fear of it because the people are closer to the earth. They don't need to be told what to do. And I mean, even it's said that the old Druids were there more as advisors rather than people who dictated. So you were there with a guide to help you along the way, but they didn't actually say, you must do this, you must do that. And it was a simpler way of living. And it's something I think we need to look at.
Well, I've mentioned this before on this program is, if people took the time to actually learn the history, and which I did. I grew up in the Christian church, Presbyterian, and, even I laugh at that because when you think about all of the different denominations of Christianity, you have to ask yourself, why? Exactly. Why is there 1,000 different Christian types of denominations and churches out there when it's all coming from the same source? But, it even goes back to, the time of Martin Luther and the Reformation and people trying to, get away from the old Catholic dogma and then trying to explore something new. But if you look at all the dogma that they come up with in these religions, Catholicism especially, people don't question enough, and they should be allowed to question. If you're in Sunday school and you start asking questions like, well, where did Cain's wife come from?
Yes.
They tell you to shut up, or they tell you to not question. And so
you've just taken me back when before I married my wife, Barbara. She was a Catholic, and of course I was a Protestant. And she said, look, you'll have to come and meet the priest. And so I said, fine. The only problem was a meeting that was supposed to last 20 minutes lasted 4 hours with him and I arguing. And at the end of it, he turned around and said, you must not marry this man.
Oh, jeez.
Because I questioned everything. But she ignored him, and we've been married for 47 years.
Oh, that's great.
But it just brought me back, yes, nobody ever questioned what the priest said. And I came along and because I was studying religious history, I was a Sunday school teacher, I could match him quote for quote. And as I say, in the end, he just said, you mustn't marry him. But water under the bridge now. It was soon after that I discovered I didn't like any sort of organised religion and found my path into paganism and witchcraft.
With paganism and witchcraft in general, let me ask you, since you're part of that, and I don't know as much about that as I would like to. What is there a particular form of, I hate to say it, like rules or dogma beliefs that you have to follow, or is it just? I'm trying to ask.
There's one tenet that most witches live by: do what you will, but harm none. So anything goes, but you mustn't harm anybody.
Well, then let me ask you this: what is a witch?
A witch, somebody who believes in there is a power out there that you can use, and it's available to the mind if you want to use it. I suppose Star Wars is the nearest. The Force. Mm-hmm. There is a force out there that you can tap into if you know how to do it. Some people do it via ritual. A lot of people. I don't bother. I suppose I've been dubbed a hedge witch because I'm a lone witch. I don't belong to a coven or anything else. I was asked this once on a Radio Lancashire programme when I'd gone to discuss my book, and the interviewer spent all the time asking me about that. But basically, it's you believe that there is something, a power that you can tap into if you need to, providing you can use it to help. And that's what I live by. If somebody asks me for help, if I possibly can, I will give it to them, whatever it is. And I've had a few strange requests over the years, not so many recently, but I think people realise I've retired from a lot of things. But it's a belief in a power that passes through everything that you can tap into, and providing you use it carefully, then there are no comebacks.
Well, that seems, it's very much in line, again, with other of the nature religions, with the Native American medicine men.
Yeah.
And healers who, I was very fascinated, and I still am, with Native American healing and spirituality, especially among the Lakota people, or even the Hopi and Navajo peoples, and the interactions. They call it spirits, but it's also the energies, the energies of the universe, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And they're able to tap into, to channel and use it for healing, for prophecy, for all manner of things. And it sounds like that's very similar to what your experience.
It is, yes. It does sound very similar. And I mean, there's also the thing that if you do send out sort of evil, there is always a chance it will rebound. And a lot of witches believe that if you send something nasty out, if you're not careful, you'll get it back threefold. So so you need to be very, very careful and use it as a force for good, which is what the white quotes witches do. I mean, I'm sure there are people there who use it for evil things, but that's the same in any religion or any faith or anything else. There are always people who use whatever power they can for evil.
Again, that's very big in Native American, especially in the Southwest, where they talk about skinwalkers, which are basically evil medicine men who use their power for harm and destruction. And that's in any religion. I mean, heck, look at, again, I'll look at Christianity and look at some of the harm that was done in the name of God, with the Inquisition and Crusades and all number of things. And now these days we're dealing with radical Islam and the horrors that they're perpetrating all across the world.
Yeah.
There's excuse, and a lot of that I feel is just, again, it's when the human ego gets involved and the lust for power.
Precisely.
That's what really perverts it. From the witchcraft perspective, where in your mind, I think I have my opinion on it, but where in your mind do you think such a negative aspect came in on witches, because when you over here, if you say the words witch or coven, automatically people are going to, Hollywood imagery, tall, pointy black hats, and thank you, Shakespeare, for the women over the cauldron, and throwing rat's tails and snakes and things into the cauldron to pull up their brews, but certainly not anything close to that.
No, I think a lot of it stems from the fact that the wise women were the women originally who did the healing. They were the midwives. And when medicine came around, that was nearly all men. And they didn't like it. And if you're looking at the history of it, a lot of it was, well, no, you shouldn't be doing it that way. And if you do it that way, then you're a witch. And it's evil. And it was very, very easy just to label someone who didn't agree with the new methods that they were a witch. Get rid of them. The men will do it this way. And it's that misogynistic attitude, I think, that's persisted because, let's face it, men are still largely in charge of everything. And even though there's a lot more equality than there used to be, men still try to say, well, we're in charge. And it's very easy then to paint women or people who say that they disagree as something evil. Yeah, it's something that's going to persist. You'll never get rid of this impression, this Hollywood idea of a witch. But they're very, very different today. I mean, I'm sure that the descendants of the Pendle witches still exist, although they haven't been on to me and sued me yet. But,
well, you in reading the books, I mean, I can honestly say they should be enjoying it because the way it's. And not to get into plot details of the book, but the two old women, they are a hoot.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just thought,
I love those characters. There's such a kick in the butt.
Yeah, well, I mean, why not? Why not enjoy life, or enjoy death as well?
Yep, so. Exactly. It's interesting that you talk about, with some people doing bad and coming back into themselves. Irene, doesn't that sound a little bit familiar?
Oh, it does. Yeah, definitely does. And it has come back with somebody. Yeah,
I'm referring to also the our book, the Demons Dwell the Tower.
Yeah.
Where? Yeah. Yeah, I was waiting to see if you were going to make that connection.
Well, there was two ways you could either go on that one, wasn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah, I hope he's listening. and I hope he has a golf ball-sized kidney stone. Anyway.
No, you don't. No,
I don't.
Not really.
No, I'm just kidding. The using these forces, these nature forces, that you talk about the god and the goddess, is in your mind as a Wiccan?
No, I am not a Wiccan.
You're not a Wiccan.
No,
I'm
a witch.
A witch.
Wiccan is a modern form of witchcraft. Dates from the 1930s. It's Gerald Gardner's form of witchcraft.
Barry?
Sorry?
Sorry, go on.
Go on, I was just saying, no, he brought in his own interpretations, but I'm a witch. I'm not a Wiccan.
And you know what?
My beliefs go back a lot further.
Okay. And I admit I'm ignorant of the subject, so if I don't mean to offend by by moronic questions, but I am learning as we go here, which is fascinating. With the types of energies from the earth that you're dealing with, do you consider them spiritual energies or do you consider them as something else?
That's a difficult one. Probably something of both. You just feel, I don't know, I feel it most when I'm working in my garden and I'm close to nature there. There is an energy there. Whether that is spiritual or just a life force, Probably it's a bit of both. It's a very hard thing to precisely define, to be honest. I just know there's a force, there's a life force out there, and it's great to be close to it.
You used the Star Wars comparison before, and it's actually very, very true in a lot of ways, because if you look at the fact, and I'm talking about this not only as a paranormal investigator and following the works of a lot of other researchers in the field, but also from our own experiences, that there is energy. I mean, we as living beings are more energy than we are matter. I mean, if you break down what matter is, you go down to the subatomic particles, to atoms, there's energy. It's all surrounded by energy. Matter is a form of energy. And if we're all energy, energy can be manipulated, it can be used, and it can never be destroyed. So energy is eternal.
That's right, yeah. And it's a case of being able to align yourself with it, to use it for good.
You can, this is something I'm looking into, I'm studying, and I'm becoming to personally believe in, is that I think mankind, many, many thousands of years ago, was more in tune to these energies overall as a society, not just individuals or smaller groups. I've leaning towards, there's the alternate views of history, there's the alternate views of the ideas that mankind in civilization is far older than modern science and history wants us to believe. Especially when you start looking at old sites like Göbekli Tepe, Pumapunka, down in South America, and these sites that are not only built so advanced, they predate the Sumerian civilization, which the modern science and archaeology tries to tell you, well, that was the very first civilization. Well, for the very first civilization, they were pretty damn advanced, so where did they get their knowledge from to build, and the stonework that they did, and their histories and novels? Because they talk about their history going back much farther, thousands of years ago, and you have even and then even the Christian in the Jewish Old Testament, the Bible, the stories from the Old Testament were based on even older stories that go back farther back in time. For all we know, mankind has been here 20, 30, 40,000 years ago. And all of these legends that you hear of Atlantis or Lemuria, Mu, and even the old, the Vedic texts from India talking about these advanced civilizations that we hear far before our recorded history, and for whatever reason, if they're wiped out and humans start all over, and then we start over and we forget our heritage, and that's what I think where we have come from. And as an earlier species, or an earlier culture and civilization, I think we were more in tune with these earth energies, the spiritual energies, as you will, the earth. The earth itself is a living, breathing organism.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And the electromagnetic field that our earth creates is also what protects us from the sun, from the powerful solar flares and charged particles that are thrown at us from the sun every single day.
Yeah.
And so, it's a living blanket.
I think we've come to rely too much on technology.
Oh, far too much.
I mean, it's great. We're talking now, across thousands of miles. But, I mean, what happens if one of those solar flares gets through and blanks out everything? We'd have to go back then to depending on our own energy, our spirituality, and connecting back with the earth. And it could happen.
Very well could happen. If of all the natural or man-made disasters that people fear, between global warming, nuclear war, you name it, terrorism, I'm telling you, a coronal mass ejection from the sun aimed right at Earth scares me more than anything because
does.
it would fry every single, power grid that we have. And we would be plunged back 150 years back to when there was no electricity. Cars, you have no electricity, no gasoline, no cars, no nothing. And
that's right. Yeah.
we have become so dependent on our gadgets, our cell phones. Everyone, if people spend as much time, trying to tap into the natural energies around us as they do with their faces glued to a cell phone and texting, imagine where we could be as a species.
Yeah. We need to develop telepathy.
But who's to say we didn't?
Some of us have got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gary.
Some of us have got it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point. I think we probably did have when we were a lot closer and we didn't need the gadgets.
We're just suppressing all that, that's all. But when, think about it, though, the energy of nature and everything. When you go out in your garden, you feel good. When you go for a walk, you feel good.
Yeah.
That's what we've suppressed is coming back out again.
It needs to, yeah. And what I like is the fact that children still believe. I mean, my grandsons enjoy being in the garden. Some of the time they get bored, but when they're there, you can see that they're connecting with things and they believe in things. I mean, there's a story, not so much with my grandsons. My eldest son, when he was about 10 or 11, he used to build model aeroplanes and suspend them from the ceiling in his room. And I could go into his bedroom and watch these planes move, and he'd be just looking at them. And yet, somebody told him at school that, no, you can't do that. And when that happened, it stopped.
Yep.
But as long as he believed, he could do it.
That is a great analogy, because that is why in our society, everything what we're talking about now is all considered fringe. Yet it used to be part of our society. We have these capabilities. We have these people who have the psychic intuition, the flashes, and yet we're all told, nope, you can't happen. It can't happen.
That's right.
We were talking with Sue in the first hour, and I mentioned how like my mother, whenever we said, oh, I heard this or something that or whatever, she goes, oh, it's just your imagination. You're dreaming it, and it gets beaten out of you. To the point now where, I barely have any intuition. Every now and then something pops through.
Yeah, I'm the same. But you try to relax into it. I mean, there's another story. A friend of ours, a young lad, he was about 7 or 8, and he had a couple of really nasty warts. And laughingly, he said, oh, Barry, every kid still calls me by my first name. Mummy says, you're a witch. How do I get rid of me warts? I said, think them away. Imagine your skin without them. And 2 days later, they'd gone. And he went to his mum and he said, look, I've done what Barry said and they've gone. He said, well, you can't do that. He said, he just said, well, I have. And he believed. And that's the point. But later on, a similar thing happened and he said, I can't do it anymore. But at that age, and he believed he could do it, and it happened. And I think a lot of it, as you say, is children are told, no, that's not the way. You can't do that to your imagination. They need to keep that imagination going.
I always wondered if an experiment can be done, and for all we know, maybe it has been done in secret, where raising a group of children in that type of environment where everything is encouraged and they're taught these things and taught right, and then over that time seeing how those children develop, not being given fantasies that aren't true. I mean, children have wild imaginations, and we like to tell them stories. We tell them about, over here we call him Santa Claus, you call him Father Christmas, and And then, when they get older, they say, yeah, it's not real. And yeah, everything's more grounded here in reality. Well, what if there was an experiment to allow their imaginations to flourish? Because how much is really their imagination and how much is it that they're really connected to these other realities, these other realms?
I think you may well find that the children of pagan families probably are raised like that, but they don't broadcast the fact.
But they're also, those same children are still in some ways connected to the modern world. It's all around them. They have those influences. And
they have to live in it. This is the problem.
Yeah.
That's it.
The experiment that I'm talking about is if they did not have those outside influences, then what could happen? What could be the possibilities?
That would be very interesting.
I mean, even in Eastern cultures, where, with Buddhism and which is a much more peaceful, nature-based, religion, if we're going to talk about major religions, it's not perfect, but it's much more calm and peaceful than the three, Abrahamic religions. They, practicing meditation, practicing going within and interacting with these natural energies all around us. But again, they're still invaded by the modern world. What happened? Europe comes in there, brings all the modern contrivances, brings in Christianity, brings in other things, and then tells people you can't do it this way. This is the way to do it. Build our physical machines, concentrate on technology, and we forget about our connection to the natural world. This may sound completely off topic, but it makes a point. When I've done a lot of research into UFOs and people's contact with these otherworldly entities or beings, extraterrestrials, for lack of a better word. And with the work of people like John Mack, who was using hypnosis to regress people who've had these experiences and the detail that they come up with, you find out that everything is much more interconnected on that spiritual and energy level. And a lot of this technology that these beings seem to have is very much thought-based and energy-based. Everything's a living thing. Even these so-called ships are alive. They're living beings in some way. And you could see these ships in some of these videos changing shapes and doing things that just totally defy the laws of physics as we understand it. And
they probably don't defy the laws of physics because, as you say, all matter is energy, and it's just a case of manipulating it.
Exactly. And who's to say that these civilizations were not bogged down by the clunky technology that we have today?
Sure.
And if you look at it, no matter how advanced we think we are, it's clunky technology. I'm picking up my cell phone right now. It's this hard piece of plastic with some silicon and diodes in it and, working off of electricity. And you know what happens? Batteries will die unless you plug it in to a wall socket provided by a coal-driven generator or water, steam, or whatever, to a shaky power grid that could go down at any moment. Yet if we found ways to tap in to Earth's natural energies, I had heard about, and we got a few minutes left in the show, but let me just mention this. I had heard about some inventions based on the Earth's natural magnetic field, getting an engine like a car engine or a device to power electricity to your home, and all it does is run off of Earth's magnetic field. Endless supply of free energy. Clean energy. Pollution just completely eliminated in that aspect. But yet, we'll never see that because, the corporations, the oil companies, and all these other companies, they make too much money doing what they're doing. People got free energy, they'd be out of business. And that's the type of environment that we've fostered, this very materialistic world. And I think if we got back to more pagan practices, pagan beliefs, natural beliefs, one with the earth, we could turn this society around and we could advance in ways that almost seem like fantasy.
I agree, yeah, definitely. I'd look to, let's hope we're all part of it. Start it here.
Yeah. That's the challenge. It's trying to get out of this modern society and change to something better. But the people in control don't want to give up that control. And it's like going back to what we discussed in the beginning of the first hour, the Pendle witches and the witchcraft trials, people who were falsely accused of things they didn't do, so that land could be grabbed, power could be taken, and agendas forced, and the simple nature ways of the earth are trampled by modern technology and modern advancement.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very shame. Well, Barry, we're coming up on the end of the show here. Now, we have your book, The Demdike Legacy, which is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and on our website at GlannantTy.com. And now you've also published, real quick, a few other books. You've had some sequels to The Demdike Legacy.
I've published one called Familiar Territory, which is actually a prequel to Demdike. And that actually stems from a year I spent as a professional tarot card reader. There was the basis of that tale comes from there. It's obviously elaborated on, but that is a story that is sort of a rogue tarot card reader with a familiar, hence the title Familiar Territory.
Okay.
And I've written another one called Fell Creatures, which is set close to my home. We have a country park here called Beacon Fell, which has a number of sculptures, and there's also a lot of legends surrounding it. So I've elaborated on those, especially the Lancashire legend of Weir Hares, which whenever a witch was being chased by the authorities, she would turn into a hare to escape. And that's a local legend, a particular Lancashire legend. So I've woven that into the story. And I'm now writing a fourth book, which at the moment I'm keeping very close to my chest, to be honest.
Don't blame you there. Well, Barry, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. I had a great time talking with you, and I highly recommend for people to pick up your book, The Demdike Legacy. It really is a fun read.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you. And that's all the time we have. So thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of Unknown Origins Radio. Tune in every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Dark Matter Radio Network. And Irene, thanks for joining us tonight as well.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon.